and thank you all, everyone, for taking the time. I know we are demanding a lot of your time in recent weeks for this 2-hour consultation, global consultation, looking at the development of a limited set of indicators by which to better gauge progress in implementing the global compacts on migration. It is great to have you all here today. Now, of course, identifying indicators to review the compact's implementation will immeasurably assist in our collective goal of developing robust, timely, and reliable data on migration, and thus informing effective policy making and programming. The voluntary use of these indicators would help empower member states to assess their progress in aligning efforts with the GCM over time, identify areas for improvement, and foster a better understanding of what gaps there are and where greater support in building capacity is needed. So today, you get to assess the progress made by the network in response to the very particular mandate laid out in paragraph 70 of the IMRF Progress Declaration. The meeting today comes almost exactly a year after this process first began, with deliberations fielded by the network on what the essential elements are to be considered in drafting the proposal. Since then, we have had a round of regional consultations, took place primarily in July of last year, to present this preliminary proposal. And now we find ourselves towards the end of this particular phase of the exercise, wanting to hear very much from you as to how you think this proposal has matured over the course of these consultations, and what gaps and areas are still out there that could be strengthened. Now, in carrying out this task, I really do wish to commend the work of the co-leads of this work stream. Now, that's particularly UNDESA, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, and particularly IOM. And if it's not too indelicate of me, within both of those, I would like to pay particular thanks to Claire Minozzi and Irene Scherfberger. They weren't alone, but they really have been at the vanguard of this work, and the commitment of these two organizations, I think, to consultations, the expertise that they bring to this topic, along with everyone else in the work stream, is something I do wish at this point in time to acknowledge, if I may. And in putting this proposal together, of course, we have built upon the wealth of indicators already available, including the SDG Global Indicator Framework. The proposal aims to leverage these existing efforts and knowledge. But the list of indicators cannot be considered exhaustive or capable of measuring in a comprehensive manner the full breadth of the GCM. So the proposal should, we suggest, be seen as a starting point. And indeed, I think that's inherent in the language of paragraph 70, which calls for a limited set of indicators that will evolve over time based on the needs of member states and their experience in using it. Let me emphasize, just before I wrap up, that of course it is the member states who will be the ones deciding whether and to what extent they wish to use these indicators based on their national priorities and capacities. And again, I think we should go back to the wording of paragraph 70, in which the Secretary General, supported by the network, was mandated with this task for your consideration. Many countries are already producing and collecting data to monitor trends on international migration. And we're looking forward to hearing today from some of these national experts who will reflect on the proposal based on their own perspectives, their own understanding of migration policy and international migration statistics. Now, we're cautiously pleased with both the process and the balance of the proposal so far. But the ultimate test is whether member states find it practical and useful as a means by which to monitor progress over time. So your feedback is and remains invaluable in finalising this proposal that will be presented before you in the next Secretary General's report in the second half of this calendar year. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for accompanying us on this proposal. With that, I will hand over to my colleague, Marcia Porras, who will take us through the rest of the event. Thank you. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Jonathan, for giving those opening remarks. As we have a very long agenda for today, it's without further delay, I would like to introduce to this section that we will hear from the two experts that have been co-leading the activities of the work stream. They will provide an overview of the indicator development process, but more importantly, how they revise the proposal for GCM indicators. First, let's welcome Irene Schoffberger. She is from the Data and Research Officer at IOM's Global Migration Data Analysis Center. Then we will also hear from Ms. Claire Menozzi, Chief of Demographic Analysis Section at the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Irene, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marcia. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. It is a pleasure to be with you today to discuss advancements on the development of a limited set of indicators to review progress on the implementation of the Global Compact. Before starting, I would like to take a minute to thank UNDESA, the co-chair of this workstream, for the excellent collaboration during the past year, and also to express my gratitude to the Secretariat for the amazing support. We could now pass to the next slide, where we see the text of paragraph 70 of the IMRF Progress Declaration, which is the paragraph through which Member States requested the Secretary General to propose for their consideration a limited set of indicators to review progress on the implementation of the Global Compact, as well as a strategy for migration data disaggregation. And this is why the workstream has two deliverables, as we can see in the next slide. And these two deliverables are first the development of a proposal for a limited set of indicators, which is what the workstream has been working on during the past year. And it is also what we are going to discuss today. And secondly, there is a second deliverable that the workstream will be working on in the next months, which is a strategy for migration data disaggregation. Next slide, please. In this slide, you can see an overview of the process that the workstream has been following to identify the preliminary proposal of the limited set of indicators. We started the activities of the workstream in January last year with a canvassing questionnaire through which we wanted to hear from member states and stakeholders with regard to their needs, priorities, and also suggestions for the limited set of indicators. Based on the responses of this questionnaire, we then developed the methodology that the workstream has been following in its activities. We have conducted a mapping of indicator frameworks that are relevant for assessing migration governance and its implementation. And this mapping one has also included key frameworks such as the SDG indicator frameworks and the indicators that have been proposed by the UN Expert Group on Migration Statistics and the International Data Alliance for Children on the Move. We have then conducted a second mapping focusing more specifically on indicators that were considered as particularly relevant for the Global Compact in mapping 1. And then based on these three analysis steps, we have developed the preliminary proposal for a limited set of indicators. In these slides, you can see 4 QR codes, which are the QR codes that allow you to access the reports that we drafted at each step of the process. Next slide, please. In June last year, we have then published the first discussion note with a preliminary proposal of a limited set of indicators, which included 20 core indicators, which were chosen due to the relevance for to different GCM objectives, and because they fulfilled many of the criteria we had been assessing in mapping 2. And we also included 41 additional indicators. And here I would like to take a moment to thank the workstream members, which contributed to the development of this proposal with their thematic expertise and by participating in extensive consultations. Next slide, please. From July to December, we then took the time to consult with member states, with stakeholders, and with other work streams of the UN Migration Network, in particular through 5 regional consultations and by conducting a survey on the preliminary proposal. And we then used the feedback and the suggestions that we collected to revise the proposal for a limited set of indicators. In the next slide, you can see more details on the 5 regional consultations that we conducted in July, and you can see that we had over 800 participants that attended one or more of the 5 regional consultations. And this was very important for us to collect feedback and suggestions from each region to make sure that we develop a proposal that is also appropriate for all regions. In the next slides, we can then see an overview of the responses we received to the survey that we conducted last year. And we can see that we had a total of 48 responses, of which 18 were submitted by government entities from all regions of the world. And while we collected a wide range of comments and suggestions, we also observed that most respondents agreed that the core and the additional indicators that we included in the proposal were relevant to the scope of the objectives of the Global Compact. They also considered that they adequately reflected the guiding principles of the Global Compact and that they built on existing reporting requirements and mandates. As I just mentioned, based on this feedback, we then revised the proposal for a limited set of indicators. And here I would like to give the floor to Claire so that she could tell you more about the revised proposal. Claire, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Next slide, please. So as Irene mentioned, we built on the work, the extensive work that we conducted with you and with the members of the work stream, and in particular the survey and the 5 regional discussions, and we used the feedback to craft the revised proposal. And it consists of 26 core indicators and 76 additional indicators. We went through the objectives, and indicator by indicator, we reviewed your comments, your feedback, and we had extensive consultations to ensure that the revised proposal was balanced and appropriate. One of the features of the revised proposal is that we added key background information and statistics, which are new. And in adding them, we were basing this practice on the UN expert group on migration statistics and the IDAC, both of which have a similar feature. Next slide, please. So here you can see a sort of a snapshot, which is also in the discussion note, of how the core and additional indicators overlap and how they look. So one change that we made is that we, compared to the preliminary proposal, is that for each objective of the GCM, we have 2 core indicators now. And these are all taken from existing indicator frameworks, many from the MGI, from the SDG indicator framework, and 1 from the IDEC. And we think this is very important because it very much follows in line with the mandate that you gave us in paragraph 70. The additional indicators are now 76 in the revised proposal. They vary by objective from about 2 to 12. Many of them are multi-purpose, meaning that they serve to cover more than one objective. There's an overlap between the core and the additional indicators. Again, multi-purpose. 10 of the core indicators are also additional. And one feature that we have compared to the preliminary proposal is that now we have 18 new indicators. In the preliminary proposal, we only had 1. And this was in response to your requests, mainly through the survey, but also in the regional consultations, about the fact that there are some objectives for which there are gaps in the existing indicator frameworks. And so the work stream identified text from the GCM, which we thought would be relevant, building on your feedback. And these are what represents the 18 new indicators, and we will see them in the discussion. Thank you. Next. So this gives you a graphical representation of how the number of indicators changed between the preliminary and the revised proposal. And you can see that the dark blue was the original and the light shaded blue is the revised. And you can see now there's a more balanced number for all the objectives, the 23 objectives for the core. And also there's been an increase for many of the additional. And again, this was based on your feedback from the survey and from the regional consultations about areas where the preliminary proposal needed to be expanded and strengthened. Next slide, please. This is going back to the additional new feature that we've included. And I think, again, this was in response to your feedback that we needed to have some key background statistics and information. And essentially, we're proposing to include a series for 10 key data that are already being collected, estimated, or compiled by entities of the UN system, including World Bank, ILO, UNDESA, and others, and essentially in line with what the UN expert group on migration statistics and IDAC had suggested. Many of these are on migrant stocks or flows, also remittances, information on international mobility of students, and on international migrant workers. Next slide, please. And in addition, there was a sense that it might be helpful to also look at the ratification of key international legal instruments from ILO and the UN. And these are the instruments that are referenced in the text of the GCM. There are 16. And again, this data is widely available, is collected through the ILO and the UN treaties, and they're already publicly available information, so it would not represent an additional burden to member states. Next slide, please. So this is just to give you a wrap-up of the next steps and where we stand now with the proposal. So this is going from December now to March. We launched the survey on the revised proposal right after we finalized the text, and we're getting a lot of feedback, so that's excellent. But for us, this is really one of the main tools for to get your feedback on what is working, what needs to be strengthened, what needs to be recalibrated and balanced. So in the next slide after this, I will show you that we have still the opportunity to participate, and I will draw your attention to that. We're also holding these 2 global consultations. This is one of them with member states. We will have another one in the second half of February with stakeholders, and this represents a wonderful opportunity for us to listen to you and see if the proposal is working and areas where it can be improved. And the final step is we will go back to the members once we've concluded these processes, look at all the feedback we've received, update our proposal, revise it, and finally it will be shared with the executive committee for their consideration. Next slide, please. So as I indicated, the survey has been extended until the 11th. If you have not already participated, we urge you to do so. This is the QR code, and also it's password protected. Your feedback is extremely important to us, and we do take it very seriously. We review it extremely carefully. So if you would like to participate, please try to do so, and thank you very much for all your engagement.
Thank you very much, Claire and Irene, for this overview on the proposal. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our first keynote speaker that will reflect on the proposal based on their expertise. Mr. Diego Iturralde, Chief Director for Demography and Population Statistics at Statistics South Africa, where he oversees the production of population estimates, demographic research outputs, and migration indicators. He is also an advisor for IOM GIMDAC, former co-chair of the UN Expert Group on International Migration Statistics, as well as member of the Specialized Technical Group on International Migration of the African Union. He's also part of the IDAC initiative with UNICEF, IOM, and OECD, where he chairs a working group. Diego, it's good to have you here again. Now the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My Zoom just kicked me out of my laptop, so that I don't get kicked off again, I'm going to switch my camera off, and then I will make my comments. So once again, I'd like to thank the Migration Network for giving me the opportunity to provide some comments on this revised set of indicators to measure progress on the implementation of the Global Compact. I think when we last met in August, I was providing some comments to the African stakeholders. And so it's very pleasing to see that these consultations have resulted in a further revision of the indicators. I know that there will be a more detailed discussion on the indicators later in the program. So I won't dwell too much on specific indicators. Suffice to repeat what Claire just mentioned, that the indicators are more balanced. They seem to cover many of the thematic areas around migration, and they seem also to have a good balance of empirical indicators versus governance indicators. So today's session represents an opportunity to reflect on the 10 key background statistics that are a new feature, as well as reminding us of the 16 conventions and legal instruments that are there, and then also the 26 core indicators and the 76 additional indicators. I think in this regard, I think that 10 key background statistics are a fantastic idea to provide an overview. My main comment in this regard would be that indicator 3 and 4, which looks at migration flows, would probably be problematic for some countries to collect. We know that there are very few countries that do collect migration flows and that report on those migration flows. So in this respect, it could be something that will be lacking, but it is aspirational in that this framework enables us to work towards that. I think that the issue of citizenship is also maybe an indicator worth considering. The World Bank Development Report last year did make a distinction between international migrants in the sense that it has traditionally been defined vis-a-vis the way the World Bank defined it as being foreign citizens who have moved to another country. Both have their own merits, but I think that the main takeaway is that both are important for us to understand. So there has been this rigorous selection process that has been made by applying the 9 selection criteria. And once again, I'll repeat what I said last year, is that we should bear in mind that this is the first time that we are doing this. So I think that the network needs to be commended, because I think we are learning about what member states are wanting and what is important in terms of the monitoring of the GCM as we go forward. So besides asking the questions of what are the indicators that we are going to track, I think it is equally important to ask the question of how are we going to collect the data to populate these indicators. And I'm going to focus my intervention in this regard. Now, one of the major sources which I already alluded to is that the 2 main frameworks that are being used are the SDGs, which all member states have agreed to as a tool to measure population and development, as well as, more specifically, sustainable development, and the other one being the MGI, the Migration Governance Index. Now, I think that when we look at the migration governance indicators, it's important to understand where the source came from. This was established in 2015 as a tool to measure individual government trends in migration governance, and I'm not too convinced that it is a tool designed specifically to measure the implementation of the Global Compact. That said, although the indicators have not changed since its inception, the data that has been harmonized across many countries has been linked to the 23 objectives. So I am still recommending that we use the migration governance indicators, but that we view it in this particular
recording in progress,
and that there are other that we should bear in mind other reports or other ancillary sources that speak to migration governance that might exist. So whilst I've indicated that the SDG is responsible for 10 of the 26 indicators, and we have 15 from the MGI and 1 from the IDAC, I think what this is actually saying to us is that we need to build on the work that has been done across all of these frameworks. It would have been very easy to just cut and paste one framework on top of the 23 objectives, but that would not have done justice to this particular task. So building on all the frameworks, I think, is really important. I think it's also important that countries realize, as Jonathan has indicated, that each individual country owns the indicators, and that this is not necessarily a report card to see who is implementing the Global Compact better or faster or more effectively than the other. I think that the indicators that a member state may choose to report on will be reflective of the policies that they have implemented and developed over time, and looking at these indicators to try and track the effectiveness of this. Countries are, of course, also free to add thematic indicators such as climate change or remittances, for example, to the proposed indicators as and when they are relevant to local contexts. Now, one source that the proposals does not mention, but that the Global Compact does, are migration profiles. South Africa is in the process of completing the production of its first profile at the moment. And I think that many lessons have been learned within South Africa with regards to the production of this profile report, particularly with regards to which departments are measuring what, which indicators are being disaggregated. And through this, we're able to identify where is there a need for further technical assistance so that we are able to make use of data sources that are being collected by line departments. So although migration profiles are produced by individual countries and are generally comparable, but not specifically comparable in all aspects, it is a source that needs to be taken into account. These represent a very valuable empirical input, not only in terms of empirical indicators, but also on those relating to migration governance. So whilst the indicators come from a variety of frameworks, I think something that needs to be stressed is that of disaggregation. I think that the indicators that have been selected need to be disaggregated in as many ways as possible within local context. This can be by age, sex, disability status, migration status, geographic location, as well as income or education level. In particular, the disaggregation, we should attempt to have it available at a local government level, because it is at this level that migration governance challenges exist and where the majority of the capacity building is required. In this regard, South Africa has not only included a migration module in the population census, which was recently released, but is also exploring the insertion of various modules in household surveys so that these indicators can be produced annually. In addition to that, I think that the investment into administrative data is something we need to look at extremely seriously. We need to invest in administrative data in order to capacitate line departments not only to collect data in a way that shows its value and its importance, but also in order for it to extend the content that it is collecting. I spoke now of disaggregation, and I think exactly the same thing applies here, that when collecting data of an administrative nature, that we should be disaggregating this most specifically at least by country of birth, if not migration status. And of course, this should include a sustainable and secure mechanism to share data with the National Statistics Office. There are a variety of data sources, as I've indicated, but I think it's important to note that there are opportunities and there are challenges across the board with all of them. Even if we are using big data as well as the more traditional sources of data, we should bear this in mind. Accessing private sector data is equally important, as are public-private data collaboratives. There are a variety of countries that have already prepared GCM reports from the previous IMRF in 2022, and I think this too is a useful source of information that should be used to try and populate these indicators. We've indicated the work being done by IDAC, as well as on the expert group of international migration statistics, and I think these are two frameworks that have certainly provided a lot of guidance in terms of indicators to be collected and data sources to be used. I'm quite privileged to have been involved with both of these at different points in time, and I think there is a lot that we can learn from the path that has been taken by these two activities. Although there is plenty of data available, and all these need to be, although there's plenty of data available, I think the key thing is that we need to maximize the use of all these data sources in terms of tracking the extent to which the Global Compact is being implemented through these indicators that have been presented to us this afternoon. So the use of data is not only important for policies, but I think it's now also becoming important for the implementation of the Global Compact. A key consideration related to the ability to collect data is, of course, capacity building, which I've mentioned a few times now. Now, whereas we are able to benefit from what I would call institutional capacity building that we receive from various agencies of the United Nations and other such entities, I think that peer-to-peer learning is also important. And I think that by learning from each other, particularly at a regional level, that is where the real learning comes in. A few recommendations or appeals then from my side would be that, in my view, we need a global capacity building program with the requisite funding in order for it to succeed. There have been many recommendations made about capacity building in the past. One of the task forces of the expert group is currently working on this particular issue, but the issue of financial resources and technical input into these capacity building programs is still something that is unresolved. Another thing which I think we need is a global monitoring exercise from the UN. I think that there have been many initiatives to encourage data collection and to implement various recommendations, but we do not know to what extent this is being implemented or how much better data collection is today than what it was, or if it is remaining the same. So in closing, I would say that we need far better coordination between national statistics offices and line departments to be able to produce the data that we need with the requisite quality to be official statistics. I think we all know that the traditional census is extremely costly to implement. Response rates are declining around the world. Many countries are still recovering from a statistical point of view from the impact of COVID-19. So all of these point towards data that is being collected, being generated by individuals themselves, as well as being collated through administrative processes. I also suggest that coordinating forums similar to those that discuss policy issues are required and needed for data production and monitoring issues. South Africa has established a migration and urbanization forum through which these discussions regularly take place. And I would certainly recommend something like that has the buy-in of partners across government. Ultimately, what we really need is global advocacy for the transparent and the responsible collection and use of data in order to ensure that we are effectively and transparently monitoring the implementation of the GCM and ensuring that no one, including migrants, are left behind. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Diego, for this overview and for your recommendations. Now it's my honor to introduce the second keynote speaker, Ms. Karima Bilhaj. She's the head of Population Policy Monitoring Department at the High Commission for Planning, the National Statistical Office of Morocco. Additionally, Ms. Bilhaj was actively involved in the international efforts to improve migration statistics, co-chairing Task Force 1 of the UN Expert Group on Migration Statistics and as member of IDAC. Karima, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Marcia.
Thank you very much, Marcia. I am going to speak French. First of all, I would like to thank the UNNM for inviting me for the second time to this global assessment for measuring the progress of the GCM indicators. Morocco was one of the first countries signing it. I also wanted to congratulate you for the work you've done so far to review the different indicators. In my presentation, I will try To target my comments, I will talk about the list of indicators in general, but also about the implementation processes for these monitoring indicators. I will talk about the challenges and opportunities that come from them. My colleague Diego has presented this at the macro level, and I will try to present the micro situation at the national level. There is no doubt about the quality of the indicators to cover the different fields, and they meet the need for monitoring at the national level. But what about the relevance of these indicators at the micro level? I want to say at the migrant level. Do they really reflect the migrants' situation, whatever their mobility scheme is? So, if the migrant wants to move, or if the migrant wants to settle in their host country, for example, in Morocco, or it could also be a Moroccan resident residing abroad, so a member of the diaspora. Do these indicators provide information about access to healthcare? Do they really provide us with information about the real access? Because we do have information on the access. If we have a look at the legislation in the different countries, we can get this kind of information. In case of a litigation or a dispute, will the migrants win? In terms of accommodation, do the migrants have the financial resources and the documents in order to access accommodation or to get loans? For me, these questions are really essential. We need to be able to answer them. Because in the end, even if we have national strategies dedicated to migrants at the micro level, migrants are facing lots of obstacles to enjoy their rights, even if they should be enjoying them. It is also essential for these indicators to improve the narratives in terms of migration. We need to highlight the positive impacts of migrants for the country of origin and the host countries. This would allow people to better understand migration at the national and international levels. On top of that, we would like to know if these indicators meet the needs at the local level. That is to say, do they meet each region's specificities? So, for example, the regions that are border regions, how can they face irregular migration? Do those indicators allow to measure the impact on the social and economic development of a region? For instance, a region that receives more transfers, direct transfers to households. Some regions benefit more than others from diaspora's investments. So these are questions we could think about. We would like to know if these indicators allow us to answer these questions. The second aspect I wanted to highlight is the implementation process of these indicators and the benefits and challenges linked to those. First of all, there's a major challenge, which is the political will. Is the GCM monitoring a national priority? Secondly, what mechanism do we have for implementing it? At the national level, there are different interlocutors that are concerned because different fields are related to migration. There are different institutional players that take part in the process. There is also the question of the data quality in order to inform these indicators. For instance, the frequency and many other technical aspects. As you know, there are different lists of indicators developed by different international agencies. There is a high demand to produce more indicators, and this is creating lots of challenges, especially for the national statistics bureaus. I would like to suggest a few things to talk about the opportunities we can have, basing my talk on the Moroccan experience. In order to have a better implementation of the GCM, or of the GCM indicators, it is essential to have a legal framework. That is to say, a framework that makes this process legitimate. It is essential for the success of such a project. It strengthens the stakeholders' commitment and the continuity of the implementation process. It also allows to monitor, to assess this process. Because if we organize meetings like this and we present the list, the different indicators, it is not sustainable, I would say. The third point I would like to insist on is leadership. Leadership is something that is essential in this process. We need to have a leader. This leader needs to be working in an independent institution that is strong and that has a strong impact at the national level. This institution should also have the good human resources in terms of availability and skills. So I'm thinking about the National Statistics Office that can play this role. We can also organize consultations at the national and local levels with the different players that are dealing with migration, so the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Employment, and so on. And we can also work with the local bureaus of these institutions at the local level in order to have a better rollout. We also have an opportunity that is related to the role of the international institutions in order to create synergy between the different players and different frameworks, existing frameworks, as you mentioned them earlier. There is also a role that can build capacities. We need support from the financial institutions, from the statistic offices, and I am coming back to what my colleague Diego was mentioning earlier. And when I'm talking about building capacity, I wanted to say that we could strengthen modules at the statistic bureaus or offices, and we can also use different sources like administrative data sources, and this in order to produce indicators that can better inform policies in terms of international migration. My last point that could strengthen the use of these indicators is strengthening analysis and research within the statistic bureaus or other divisions in charge of migration. This is what I wanted to say. I am available if you have any questions about this.
Thank you, Karima, for being with us today and for your remarks and observations. I would like to thank once again the keynote speakers for being with us today. The next section will be organized into clusters, each focusing on the GCM objectives for reviewing the proposed indicators. This space will provide us a unique opportunity to harness the collective knowledge in this virtual room, if I may say, and to shape the proposal for indicators that truly capture the vision of the GCM. Now, I would like to hand over the meeting to Mr. Paul Tucken from International Labour Organization and also a member of the workstream to moderate the next section. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcia, and thank you to all those who've spoken so far. And, I'd like to add my thanks to the Network Secretariat and to the co-chairs, especially Irina and Claire, for the great and inclusive process that they have undertaken so far to develop this list of indicators. It's been quite an intensive process. There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth. But I think we've come out with a set of indicators that we are broadly quite, there's quite a strong consensus around what we have. So I won't say much more because I really want to give over the space to the member states for this sort of unique opportunity to provide input. But I will be looking at the first cluster of objectives. So the idea here is to look at the indicators related to those objectives covered in IMRF Roundtable 1. So those are objectives 2, 5, 6, 12, and 18. Points for anyone who can remember what all of those are, but in case that has slipped your memory, it is minimizing the adverse drivers of migration, regular pathways for migration, fair recruitment and decent work, the migration processes, and looking at skills recognition and development. So quite a wide range of objectives, but with sort of a red thread running through related particularly to labor migration and decent work. So we'd like to really offer you this space to provide your input on the proposed set of indicators. Again, sort of thing that we have tried to our utmost possible to keep to the mandate given to us in the Progress Declaration of the IMRF to keep this framework relatively limited based on existing indicators as much as possible and feasible. So I don't want to take any more time. I'd like to hand over the floor to anyone who would like to speak, please. And maybe just to say, I think you can raise your hands, use the reactions function to raise your hands to indicate that you wish to take the floor. Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Paul, but we have already indicated that in this section we will have Mrs. Stephanie Schwartz from the head of division from the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, who will provide some general observations on the proposal.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Hi. Hello, Paul. Nice to see you again. And hello to everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to come in and to share some of our observations with the suggested set of indicators. But let me also start by commending the network and the team for doing this tremendous work. I know it's very hard to work on something which is only visible if it's not working. So this is basically the backbone of working and functional monitoring of the GCM. Therefore, Germany really applauded also the progress resolution for including this new goal of developing those indicators. But I also know from a personal experience, it's really hard to work on something which is technical, complex, and where it's sometimes difficult to engage also stakeholders and member states to fully come on board and contribute. So therefore, thank you very much for this participative process, including stakeholders and giving member states the opportunities to comment and to look at the drafts you have developed. And as was said before, this is also, of course, something shared by German development policy. Evidence-based planning and programming is only possible if we have a good set of indicators and if those indicators are really fit for purpose. So if they are meaningful, if they are disaggregated in instances where it's necessary, and also they have to be formulated in a way that gathering the data to fulfill the indicators is also done in a way that it doesn't overburden the capacities, and that it reflects also existing indicators, data, and statistics. And overall, from a German point of view, the revised proposal is reflecting that really well. I also wanted to specifically thank you for adding in some instances additional indicators that address gender responsive migration policies. That from a German perspective is very important to reflect the gender responsive approach, and to also give us the possibility to collect data and to measure our success in this regard. So I have a whole list of remarks here on the specific objectives which we discuss in this round of the focusing on the objectives 2, 5, 6, 12, and 18. But I think I would not share this whole list of remarks here at this point of time, because it's probably too long and overburdening the discussion. I also would like to give the space to others to do so, but this is something we would also then provide you with a written remarks after the meeting, to have some minor amendments to the suggested indicator formulation. Let me check if I have some specific points I would like to mention beyond the gender responsive progress we see in the formulation. I think I would stop here and close by really thanking you for taking into account the recommendations Germany gave in the past, which we also included in the survey. So also this is something I really see as very responsive from the team, that our recommendations were taken up and really reflected in the new proposal. And I'm looking forward to the discussion and might come in then to some specific objectives or specific remarks later in this exchange. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and nice to see you as well. And thank you for your kind words. I would now like to give the floor over to Mr. Eduardo Qua from Portugal. Mr. Qua, if you're online, please, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. We would like to thank the United Nations Network on Migration invitation to participate at this event. Portugal being fully committed with the GCM implementation and with the promotion of international dialogue on migration, is always looking to engage with our allied countries, with international organizations, and with civil society partners to learn with different perspectives. Allow me just to make a brief presentation about the new Portuguese institutional migration framework. Since November 2023, we have a new agency for integration, migration, and asylum. The agency results from the merge between the former High Commission for Migration and the administrative part of the Immigration and Border Service. This process aims at granting the possibility of a more humanistic and agile approach to those who arrive in Portugal, as we have now under one structure different dimensions of migration, such as integration, regularization, or family reunification. It is also important to mention the promotion of human rights to all. For instance, the intercultural and interreligious dialogue are also under our mandate. Portugal recognizes the relevance of public policies targeting migrant and refugees. And in order to better draft and implement public policies, it is crucial to have reliable data and indicators. During this event, we are eager to better understand the experience followed in the different countries and how we could apply it to our reality. We also would like to share one example of what we are doing regarding indicators. We have an observatory for migration, also under IMA's mandate, that collects through the different sectorial ministries, education, health, home affairs, justice, social security, and labor, just to mention a few, a series of indicators on migrant integration in our country. Those indicators are subject to an in-depth analysis, and once a year, an annual report is published with the main trends, but also with some recommendations to put in practice. Also, with those results, it is possible to better assess how some programs and measures are resulting and, when necessary, adjust it to the reality. Additionally, we could also verify, for example, the positive net contribution migrants bring to our social security system, or the high migrant entrepreneurship rate, including from migrant women. Before concluding, we would like to reiterate our commitment to participate in those either political or more technical discussions on GCM implementation, reinforcing our recognition to all the work promoted by this UN network. Many thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwa. That's a really useful input, showing how indeed it's possible to gather this data and to use it in a very constructive fashion to support, shaping some of the narratives on migration and clarifying perhaps some of the misconceptions, as well as identifying areas in need of progress. I understand that Mexico would like to take the floor. So I'd like to give the floor to Mexico, please.
Muchas gracias. Quisiéramos agradecer
Thank you very much.
Por la preparación de la
And we would like to thank the network for putting together this proposal and for the amazing work implemented in the last few months. We would like to thank the keynote speakers for their remarks on how to move forward in the implementation of the GCM. Of course, having indicators at hand to measure the progress in the implementation of the GCM goes far beyond a technical exercise, because indicators will allow us to benchmark, identify opportunities and challenges in our migration policies. And we believe it's extremely important to be part of the process. For Mexico, it's paramount to ensure that indicators are drafted on the grounds of a 360 degrees approach, taking into account the intermingled between the different objectives and guiding principles to ensure a good governance.
Para nosotros es muy importante que los indicadores guarden
For us, it's
coherencia
very
con la
important to ensure
Agenda 2030,
the
como se ha
coherence
mencionado
between
en las
indicators
discusiones
and the
el día de hoy,
2030
y
agenda,
aquellos
as it
marcos
has already been
internacionales de
said,
derechos humanos
as
en los
well
cuales
as with
está
the
sustentado el
relevant
pacto.
human rights
Por otro lado,
frameworks.
quisiéramos insistir
On the
en que
other
los
hand, we would like to
indicadores deben
insist
aprovechar en la medida de lo
that
posible
indicators,
otros
to the
indicadores
extent
ya
of our
existentes, que es el caso,
possibilities,
como se
should be
expuso
based on already
anteriormente, como
existing
es el marco de
indicators,
indicadores
such
de
as
los
the
Objetivos de Desarrollo
SDG
Sostenible.
indicators framework.
No solo es este el
Not
mandato de los
only
estados que
this is
conferimos
the state's
a
mandate
Naciones Unidas en la Declaración de Progreso,
in the framework
sino
of
que
the
además
Progress
contribuye a reducir
Declaration,
la
but also
carga
it
que
will
representa
contribute
para
to
algunos países
ease
con
the
capacidad capacidades limitadas en la recolección y reporte de datos. En este tema quisiéramos subrayar que teniendo en cuenta las capacidades y recursos humanos financieros y humanos de los estados, es importante que el número de indicadores permanezca razonable para poder trabajar en ellos en el futuro próximo. Finalmente, quisiera reiterar que México mantiene su compromiso con este proceso y seguirá participando de manera constructiva en futuras consultas, de haberlas. Entendemos que en el calendario todavía habrá algunos espacios para intercambiar información y quisiéramos también aprovechar esta ocasión para preguntar exactamente cuál sería el calendario que tienen previsto para finalizar la indicación, la elaboración de los indicadores y pasarla a otras instancias para su consideración. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mexico, and certainly thank you for highlighting the linkage with the SDGs. This was something that was very important for us, and we, as I mentioned earlier, we have also sought to keep to the important mandates to keep things as simple as possible, understanding the capacity constraints. I do see a hand from Ecuador as well. Please go ahead. I just ask you to keep it relatively quick as we have to move to the next cluster. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Paul.
Thank you very much indeed. I will be very brief indeed. First of all, we would like to thank Jonathan, Marcia, the team, DESA, and the IOM for the organization of this forum. We would like to take this first opportunity to reaffirm our commitment in the implementation of the GSM and the review process. As it has already been said before, we consider that the proposal in general is very sound. It's a good proposal because it focuses on the implementation of the GCM, and it also will contribute to the national implementation and the review processes, right, in the following exams. As it has been said by previous speakers, there are some technical minor details, as it has been mentioned by Germany. Of course, our mandate goes far beyond one area, right? For example, in our mandate, we are responsible for statistics, but many other things. Sometimes, unfortunately, we lack statistics on specific areas, or perhaps the statistics are not reliable. We should also bear in mind the different national realities. In some countries, it's much more difficult to ensure the quality of data, especially when some departments are under-resourced or lack institutional skills. It's not a matter of lack of will, but a matter of lack of resources. We believe, nonetheless, that the proposal is very positive. It's very much aligned with the GCM. It's very much aligned with the whole of government and whole of society approach, and we can see synergies with the SDGs. We will have more specific comments to share with you later. But once again, let us reiterate our commitment with the process, and thanks for your engagement.
Thank you very much. And thank you once again for your commitment as well and your support. We'll look forward to your feedback. On the point of capacity, we understand that this is a technical exercise. We also hope that perhaps this framework could be useful in helping to support capacity building efforts in the future. So we see this as quite a dynamic process, and hopefully something which we can build upon to help sort of strengthen that capacity and address some of those gaps that several speakers have actually highlighted. I understand there's a question on the timeline going forward. I don't know, Irina, if you want to address this now or come back to this at the end, but yeah.
Yes. Happy to address it now. Thank you for this question about the timeline. We are now in a process of collecting some feedback on the revised proposal. We are in this consultation today with member states. Later this month, we will have a global online consultation for stakeholders. In parallel, as Claire mentioned, we have a survey which is open for member states and stakeholders and will remain open until the 11th of February. Then based on this feedback, we will revise the proposal, and we hope to finalize the revision by the end of March. And this proposal will then be submitted to the Executive Committee of the UN Migration Network in June. Then starting from March, the work stream will start working on the second deliverable, which is the migration data disaggregation strategy. And indeed, there is also a technical consultation with member states and stakeholders, which is foreseen for that. And I think that the Secretariat will then communicate on the exact data as soon as we will know more about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Irena. And well, time is pressing, so I will just thank all the participants once again for your support, your kind words, and looking forward very much to hearing your inputs. And I will hand back maybe to Marcia to guide the next stage of the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think that Estrella is ready to moderate the next section.
Hello, can you hear me? Thank you very much, Marcia. So good morning to all participants from New York. It is my great pleasure to moderate discussion on Cluster 2, which covers 7 objectives as shown on the screen. I'd just like to begin by thanking the UN Migration Network, like others have done, particularly the coordinator, Marcia, and the co-chairs, UNDESA and IOM, represented by Claire and Irene, respectively, for this opportunity. I have followed this process since March 2023 on behalf of UNICEF, and I'd like to recognize and also commend their efforts for painstakingly promoting a comprehensive, inclusive, and rigorous process in developing this limited set of indicators involving all concerned stakeholders in all regions of the world. Allow me to say some brief words about the International Data Alliance for Children on the Move, or IDAC for short, which is mentioned in the discussion note and also by our keynote speaker, Diego Iturralde, who is actually a co-chair of one of our working groups. The IDAC is led jointly by UNICEF, together with IOM, UNHCR, Eurostat, and OECD. And currently, it is entering a second phase, which is funded by the European Union Directorate General for International Partnerships. In the past 3 years, this alliance has been leveraging and driving global efforts to leverage the power of data and statistics to promote the protection and empowerment of children on the move, including migrant children. We work with governments and other non-state actors to strengthen governments' capacity to collect, analyze, use, and disseminate data and statistics about migrant children and their families. And these efforts include developing guidelines on definitions, data sources, relevant children on the move, as well as child-specific indicators, which have benefited from at least 16 member states' inputs and comments and 11 non-state actors. So the IDAC framework, which is one of the frameworks that have been considered in developing the limited set of indicators, builds on the Expert Group on Migration Statistics framework, as well as is rooted on the SDGs targets and indicators. And indeed, improving the data and evidence on migration is central to the IDAC mission. But we are also very much aware of the manifold challenges that governments face in collecting and analyzing and disseminating and communicating about migration data and statistics. Just to mention that we know that nearly 3 in 10 countries and territories still do not have age disaggregated stock data. So the challenges we have are enormous, but also there are potentials. And it's just so heartening to hear countries' experiences already, those who are already making headway in terms of addressing these challenges and also sharing about their good practices. So turning to the focus objectives under this cluster, as you can see, it's about legal identity and documentation, saving lives, how to counter smuggling, eradicating trafficking, managing borders in a safe and integrated manner, alternatives to detention, and dignified return and reintegration. So it is our hope that all participating countries have read the discussion note and consulted with all concerned actors at technical and policy levels in line with the whole of government approach. And therefore, the purpose of this session is to gather your reflections, comments, and suggestions on the proposed indicators and the methodology under this cluster, as well as to share your experiences in reporting migration data through existing mechanisms. And we will kickstart this discussion with a voluntary presentation by the representative of Chile, Ms. Julie Beth Rodriguez, who is a technical advisor for Migration Project, Demography Subdepartment of the National Institute of Statistics, Chile. I'm very pleased to hand over the floor to her, representing also a member of the IDAC, the government of Chile. Over to you, Julie Beth.
Muchas gracias, Estrella. Muchas gracias a la Red de Naciones Unidas por la invitación.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation. I brought a short presentation. I'm trying to share it, but unfortunately, it seems like it's not working. Estrella, I think you are presenting yourself, and perhaps this is the reason why. Thank you. Now it's up and running. Could you kindly confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, I can see it. Great.
Excellent. Thank you. So we would like to start by thanking you for your kind invitation, and we would like to commend the UN network for your immense effort of summarizing and putting together a limited set of indicators. So I would like to start by giving you a little bit of framework information about the process in Chile. With me, a representative of the National Service for Migration. I am here on behalf of the Statistics Office in Chile. We are part of what we call a Board on Migration Statistics, which is a cooperation forum between different public institutions in Chile with the aim of identifying the best possible actions to promote national statistics. This forum stems from the outcomes obtained in the last census in 2017. We realized that we had to respond to the increase in migration flows in Chile. So we merged efforts with different institutions to define a new statistics to come up with a realistic statistics on migrants. So we came to the conclusion that in Chile, there are around 1.6 international migrants. That was in 2022. So beyond this important effort in the statistics, we believe it to be important that in all the forums where we participate, the Institute and other institutions such as the Foreign Affairs Ministry, etc. So Chile has always insisted on the importance of having reliable statistics and to build politics on the grounds of evidence. So I would like to share with you some of the opportunities we see in the near future to report before international organizations on the grounds of evidence. So we have different information sources, of course. We are about to launch a new population census, and we hope that we will broaden the information and variables that we use so that we can present an updated framework for future census and service. Of course, we have a national employment statistics where we have included a new methodology that includes foreigners. We are also working in the harmonization of concepts that will be cross-cutting in all our statistics products. Also, the National Service for Migrations, the World Bank, and other relevant stakeholders promoted a survey with a migrant or migration approach, so to speak, or migration-friendly approach. And we're also gathering data on border crossings, residence permits. It has to be underlined also that in Chile, we recently published the National Bill on Migration. And last year, we adopted a new policy on migration where a lot of importance is given to national statistics. Now, let me dig in. We brought a few comments in the framework, or obtained rather in the framework of the survey. It could be said that out of the 26 key indicators that we are sharing with you today, well, most of them comply with the criteria set up at the beginning of the session. So we believe that all the indicators used are related to other existing indicators frameworks, and now I'm going to focus in the indicators for this cluster. Now, when it comes to the inclusion of background key statistics, well, perhaps we are lacking here a reference to a joint conceptual framework. We believe that the expert group in charge of the review of the conceptual framework speaks about an interesting line, which is that such frameworks should be comparable between countries, and perhaps other conventions, other international conventions should be included, such as the Convention of Geneva or the Cartagena Declaration. So this would be a general comment. Now going to a more specific element regarding the 76 additional indicators, we believe that some are better than others in achieving the main objectives. Some are improvable in terms of quantity or the reporting mechanism. We believe that all countries shall act in the most harmonic possible way. Now, let me speak about the specific indicators for objective number 4 on legal identity. We believe that this section is perhaps narrow compared to others. Nonetheless, we believe that it's important to make a clear distinction between the actions implemented in origin and destination countries, and we propose some minor amendments to the text in English. Well, we brought it in Spanish. Nonetheless, the amendments are to the English text. Perhaps we should make a reference to the country of birth of the parents, but here we should also include independently of the migration status of the parents. I'm not going to read it all because I know we're running very short of time. Nonetheless, I'd like to put the focus on objective number 8, saving lives and coordinating efforts. We believe this objective is super difficult to measure. Nonetheless, it's important to come up with coordination mechanisms, especially when it comes to where the migration is taking place. Nonetheless, we are aligning with added additional objectives which we believe respond to the overarching objective number 8. We also believe that it would be important to add a question on whether there is a clear and transparent access to statistics and to death statistics, and if there is information on the cause of death, perhaps we should update international indicators. Sometimes the cause of death is invisibilized and there is no reference to the situation. Now, regarding objective number 8, we believe it to be extremely related to objective number 10. Nonetheless, in objective number 10, the statistical indicator is much clearer. Perhaps we should reiterate the reference to previous indicators, or to, let's say, refer to the importance of raising awareness on the amount of victims, and including gender as a relevant parameter here, as well as the country of origin or the country of nationality of migrants. Now, also, when it comes to objective number 10, we believe that, of course, this objective respond to the overarching framework. Additional indicators and key indicators respond to the main aim, right? Nonetheless, it's important to also focus on the importance of ensuring that the reporting process includes information about country of origin and country of nationality, because realities in different frameworks are very different, and this would allow us also to get to know with which states we should better coordinate. Now, when it comes to objective number 11, we consider that the offer of additional indicators could be improved. We believe that one of the additional indicators could be part of core objectives or the basic objectives in a specific better understanding what is the amount of migrants in an irregular situation. This would allow us to better understand how border control is working internally in our countries. In some of the additional indicators, as you will see in the survey that we will share with you, well, it's sometimes a little bit difficult to understand what the reporting mechanism is or how would we benchmark between countries. Now, to conclude, because I don't want to take any more of your time, now regarding objective number 13, we believe that objective number 13 will be difficult to compare between countries because, for example, in our case in Chile, we don't really have a legal framework in which there is an obligation to avoid detentions on the grounds of migration status, whereas other countries do have such legal dispositions where it is banned to detain an individual on the grounds of his or her migration status. Now, when it comes to objective number 13, where there is a certain confusion on how to report, report on objective number 22, which we believe to be intermingled with objective number 22. Perhaps objective 22 is clearer. Well, these are our more our specific comments. Nonetheless, we would like to once again thank you and to reiterate our willingness to be part of all the consultations and international cooperation forums to share our best practices and to share the lessons learned that might be useful for other stakeholders and member states. This is all from my side, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Julibeth Rodriguez, for such extensive and rich comments and suggestions. I see a hand. The representative of Canada, Manuela Duque, please, over to you.
Thank you, Estrella, and thank you to member states for their valuable contributions and to the UN Network on Migration for organizing this meeting. My name is Manuela Duque. I'm a senior policy analyst from Canada's Immigration Department, joining you from Capital today. Canada welcomes the development of a limited set of indicators for assessing progress in the implementation of the GCM. As many have noted, having an indicator framework can help improve the consistency and comparability of data to inform evidence-based migration policies. Indicators will also be helpful to assess progress on the implementation of the compact and could be a helpful tool for the regional and global reviews. Canada appreciates the workstream's efforts in promoting transparency and a collaborative approach in the development of the indicators. We also appreciate the consideration put towards incorporating the GCM's cross-cutting principles, particularly the inclusion of gender-responsive indicators. We will submit a response to the second survey of the revised proposal of GCM indicators. We are currently in consultation with migration data and research experts within Canada's Immigration Ministry and also with Statistics Canada and other relevant stakeholders. On the use of the indicators, as many have noted, Canada would be interested in learning more about the workstream's plan and vision regarding how responses to the indicators would be compiled and assessed. In particular, how could member states effectively incorporate the set of indicators into their existing or upcoming review processes? We acknowledge the unique context of each member state and the level of effort associated with reporting. For Canada, we will continue to examine how we can leverage the proposed indicators for our domestic review of GCM implementation, particularly for those indicators for which we already collect data. However, we may not have the mechanisms or resources to collect data on all of the proposed indicators. On more specific suggestions, while we will provide more detailed feedback on specific indicators as part of the survey, we would like to take the opportunity to highlight 2 suggestions for the current set of proposed indicators. The first is surrounding data disaggregation to focus on migration status. So there are a few indicators that we believe would benefit from focusing on data disaggregated by migration status rather than measuring general country conditions. For example, Objective 2 on minimizing adverse drivers has a proposed indicator on the proportion of informal employment by sector and sex. It would be beneficial to perhaps include proportion of informal employment by migrants in total population, just to paint a clearer picture that is more relevant to the GCM objectives. The second suggestion would be, or comment rather, is something that others have mentioned as well, related to the challenges that we face with measuring some of the indicators. There are still some challenges identifying data sources and collecting data. Some of these indicators include data on recruitment costs, the number of people who died or disappeared in the process of migration. So for these proposed indicators, the question is whether there would be further guidance or collective efforts to determine how to measure these, or perhaps could the indicators be redefined in a way that is more easy to measure. Another consideration could be perhaps putting some of these indicators as additional indicators until the methodological challenges are resolved. So once again, we would like to thank the UNNM and the work stream for their efforts in developing the proposed indicators and for the opportunity to provide input. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Manuela Duque. I believe that I do not see any more hands. We don't have any chat messages to answer. In the interest of time, we will move on to the next cluster. So handing back to you, Marcia. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Estrella. Harry, are you ready?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. Thank you for joining, and we're now moving on to cluster 3, panel 3, where we're looking at those 6 objectives that are showing on the screen. That's 14, 15, 16, 19, 20, and 22. And just to say once again, thank you to the co-chairs that have been leading the work stream. My name is Patty Sianga-Knudsen, Vice President of the Global Research Forum on Diaspora and Transnationalism, an active member of the work stream. And also as GRFDT, we very much believe that civil society, academia, and the wide range of non-state actors are essentially important in supporting member states see through to the implementation of the GCM, as well as the important work that's around developing a limited set of indicators to which we sit on the work stream, and very happy to be led and to be engaged with other members of the work stream. And so without taking too much of the time that we have here for this particular cluster, we actually do have some reflections that would be shared from a government representative. And therefore, I'd like to ask Mr. Walter Schlutt, Minister at the Permanent Mission of Ecuador to the United Nations in Geneva, to give us some remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Okay, I'll switch to Spanish. Sobre este cluster, tercero en primer lugar.
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting us. And bearing in mind the short amount of time, we'll go straight to the objectives. For objective 14, for improvement of protection, cooperation, and consular assistance, in Ecuador, we believe that indicators are very adequate for this objective. We believe that in our case, it's related to measuring all measures of improvement for consulate and migration services that we provide, especially the digitalization of those processes, also reducing times, document issuing, improving the quality of response. And what we do is a special attention for more vulnerable groups and also in crisis situation. We had a specific case we would like to share. At the beginning of the crisis in Ukraine, we issued emergency passport in a very quick way, and that allows us to have back in Ecuador more than 125 nationals. Let's move to objective 15. The proposal is fine for us. We just wanted to point that there may be some political sensitivity in this objective in some countries, but at the same time, we consider it has to be adjusted to international standard of human rights. And for us, it's very important to clarify in the footnote in these indicators, especially the basic health services. Those services must be those essential for mothers, children, and also assistance in emergency for any medical services needed in an urgent way in the life-threatening situations. This would allow us to measure the efforts that we do or give universal access to migrant people to education, health in the country, regardless of their migration situation. This has a very high cost for the state, but this is something we can measure and we consider it's a very adequate indicator. Objective 16, generally speaking, indicators look fine for us. There's a measure that would be linked in inclusion strategies as regularization procedures that we do since 2019. We're giving attention to more than 130,000 requests, but we also see some additional indicators, not for the core, but for the additional. Some of them are too specific for the labor field, and in some cases, it could make not visible the positive results or the positive balance for the social inclusion. Objective 19, we believe the writing or the drafting of the first indicator could improve in order not to go to the maximum possible, but to evaluate measures implemented by any government to improve that impact, but not to take it to the maximum, because it could be difficult in some cases. The second indicator, we consider it's adequate. It's covered in our case with our national tables, where we have dialogue spaces about migration policies. We exchange opinions, and we also have citizens' participation. There's a remark we may include in a specific way. We would like to share that our concept of inclusion is not only referred to immigrants and refugees, but also to Ecuadorian migrants that decide to leave the country. And for those people, our state has public policies that facilitate benefits for a voluntary return in a safe way, and also for professional and social reinsertion. Objective 22, we consider it's pertinent. Some of them are covered in bilateral convention and multilateral convention for social security in order to guarantee the social protection in any of the countries that signed those agreements, to avoid the double taxation with temporary movement, and also for pensions. This is for the specific objectives. As I said at the beginning, we have challenges and we have two suggestions for dialogue. for this cluster. First one is the possibility to reduce the number of indicators, especially those additional indicators that could generate a excessive burden for our countries. We have another suggestion, which is to bear in mind the need to differentiate the different kind of indicators, not only core and additionals, but also those, for instance, political framework, and those that require data that must be updated in time, the number of services, among all. And something else we may include is, just to make it clear, to have a baseline, to see the history in the progress of a policy or a specific action. The work group could also elaborate some technical guidance to allow the clarification of some indicators. And my last suggestion would be to consider in the future maybe the possibility to make some reporting process automatic. We have several examples. As for human rights, we have national mechanisms for reporting, for following up, or rights in other countries, DNRS, or voluntary national exams for ODGs. That's all from my side. Again, congratulations to the network, to the co-directors for the proposal. We consider it keeps a balanced vision for the application of the Global Compact. Having a human rights vision, we'll continue with our national work with institutions that have the statistic data. Once we have the definite framework, and again, we invite all states participating and other states to consolidate a position about the details of the proposal so that in the future we don't have an excuse or a limitation that may present some reservation. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you to the representative of Ecuador for those very extensive remarks, very detailed in terms of the indicators themselves, but I think also a couple of questions that you have raised and recommendations. And I will ask our co-chairs probably after the last cluster discussion or cluster presentation to share maybe some reflections into some of the questions you've in relation to methodology, and also I think very grateful for the call on further state involvement in this particular process. We appreciate. And now I would like to move on to the floor following the spirit of Ecuador in terms of reflections into this panel itself, and also other comments you may have around the process and the methodology. And I would like to pass over the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom, followed by Colombia, and after that, followed by a representative from the European Union. So we'll start with the representative of United Kingdom, Ms. Anna Brown.
Thank you. So I'd like to make this joint statement on behalf of Cyprus, Denmark, Finland, Greece, Lithuania, Malta, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. So this group welcomes the opportunity given by the Secretariat of the United Nations Network on Migration to provide further feedback on the latest draft of the GCM indicators. We'd like to thank the UNNM for their continued work on the indicator framework and for the improvements that they've made in the latest draft, including the use of a wider range of indicator frameworks. We appreciate the constructive approach that the network has taken during this process. However, we still have some concerns with some of the indicators and the way that they are drafted, and think that further improvement of the framework is necessary to make it truly 360-degree and to ensure that it is faithful to the text of the GCM. So firstly, the proposed indicators for Objective 15 and 22 on access to services contain some assumptions that do not coincide with our interpretation of the GCM, most notably the lack of distinction between regular and irregular migration. The GCM makes clear that states maintain the right to provide different levels of services to nationals and to regular or irregular migrants, depending on their status, as long as access to basic services is available to all. We would like to see this carefully negotiated GCM language accurately reflected in the indicators. Secondly, we remain concerned that the elevation of some of the potential example actions within the GCM to indicators of its successful implementation risks changing the overarching interpretation of its carefully negotiated text. We see those examples as examples of good practice and not as the basis for measuring the GCM progress per se. Finally, we'd welcome additional clarity on how you envisage these indicators will be used, measured and evaluated in the framework of the IMRF and progress evaluation on the GCM. We remain available to the Secretariat should they wish to discuss these comments in further detail. Thank you.
Thank you for the remarks. And I will refer to the co-chairs to share with us some reflections as they will come after the next cluster discussion. And I'll call upon Ms. Laura Arango from Colombia to share the remarks, and followed by Enrico.
Thank you very much, Patty. Muy buenas tardes a los organizadores y los panelistas.
Good afternoon to you all. My name is Laura Arango. I'm the permanent mission of Colombia. Our colleagues are not here, but they are looking very attentive to the process. Congratulations to Chile, Mexico, and Ecuador for their active presentation. This is proof of our engagement. Our government has an engagement with the proposal, and as Mexico said in the first cluster, we consider that this work done by IOM and several stakeholders is in line with the tools and instruments and Agenda 2030. And as Mexico said, the different human resources bodies and other instruments. We back and the importance of having these tools for collecting data and information. We are willing, apart from our challenges, the focus in human rights, as Ecuador said during the first cluster. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now the representative from the European Commission.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the floor. My name is Anika Csontos, and I represent the Directorate General for Migration and Home Affairs. But I speak on behalf of the entire Commission because, as requested, we made an effort in the spirit of a whole of government effort to collect inputs from all our services. Thank you very much to the network and the colleagues for this gigantic work. And let me also stress the importance of indicators in order to monitor the implementation of the Global Compact. Data and indicators are something that we also put a lot of emphasis on in the European Commission, and our member states report detailed migration statistics to Eurostat, the EU Statistical Office, and we have a dedicated legislation on statistics on migration, and we constantly strive to improve our data and indicators. Before I make some comments relating to the current group of GCM objectives, let me make a few broader comments, echoing some of the comments that were made already before me. So first of all, we provided detailed written comments already to the survey. Thank you very much for consulting us. We welcome that the indicators cover all the GCM objectives as requested by most of the stakeholders. And also we find that they are covering the GCM objectives in a relatively balanced manner. We also believe that GCM principles are well covered. We welcome the focus on gender and child-sensitive aspects. We proposed reinforcing the gender and vulnerability aspects in some indicators, for example, for GCM Objective 7. We overall found that the core indicators were good and 2 indicators per objective was fine. We believed that some aspects were clearly missing regarding GCM Objective 2, so adverse drivers, such as, for example, economic reasons, rule of law conflict. Regarding the additional indicators in several objectives, we found that these were too few, would need to be expanded if we really wanted to measure the progress on GCM. We found that some additional indicators were too broad and often not linked to migrants. So we would also like to emphasize the need to include disaggregation by migration status in under several of the GCM objectives. And this is linked actually to the current cluster. For example, in objective 15 and 16, we see clearly an added value by disaggregating by migration status, because currently we don't necessarily see an added value if we don't disaggregate by migration status. We also would like to proposed actually in writing suggestion to complement additional indicators or make them more precise. For example, some indicators are not targeted on migrants, but so they don't differentiate between citizens and migrants, and we would see an added value in differentiating. Also, for other indicators, we would suggest breakdowns according to age, or, for example, when it comes to regular migration, based on the various legal basis for the state, so work, study, family, and other. We wonder, we might wish to consider checking the consistency across indicators with a quantitative dimension. So, for example, a clean indication of the reporting period and relevant breakdowns to the target group would be beneficial, also to understand how stakeholders will be reporting about all their work. And finally, we would have a forward-looking suggestion regarding the number of returnees. Although we are aware that data is currently not available at the global scale on numbers of voluntary and forced returns, this is something we could envisage for the future. And we remain very much committed to work and provide our input to this very important work strand also in the future. Thank you very much for the floor.
Thank you so much for sharing so candidly and also quite detailed. Once again, just encouraging other member states who would have similar comments on this particular panel and also to react via the survey. And on that note, we'll move on to the next cluster, and I will hand over to the workstream colleague, Dominique. Over to you for the next panel.
Thanks, Patty, and a warm welcome to everyone to the discussion of the fourth and last cluster of indicators. My name is Dominique Kner. I'm with the United Nations Development Program based in New York. UNDP has been an active member of this workstream. We were there from the start. So I would like to thank our co-leads, UNDESA and IOM, for making this process truly inclusive. As Jonathan did in his introduction, I would give a shout out to Claire, Irene, and Marcia, the colleagues who really made us felt heard as UNDP. I know we had a lot of comments on all the objectives, especially on objective 2, minimizing the adverse drivers of migration. But I also remember many opportunities where we could bring in our development expertise. So many thanks for this. I have the pleasure now of moderating the fourth cluster, which comprises the indicators 1, 3, 7, 17, and 23. We have this helpful slides to remind everyone what these objectives are about. So our discussion will cover various topics: data, information at all stages of migration, vulnerabilities in migration, discrimination and perception of migration, as well as international cooperation and global partnerships. I know this has already been a long meeting, and to energize us and to start off the discussion of this cluster, I have the pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Ulvi Aliyev. He's the Chief of International Cooperation Department of the State Migration Service of the Republic of Azerbaijan. I do hope I pronounced your name correctly. If not, I apologize, and I give the floor to you. Look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Lear, and I hope everyone can hear me. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone. And first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Secretariat of the UN Network on Migration for organizing these consultations, as well as keeping the flame alive at all levels for assisting all the stakeholders in better implementation of the GCM. And I believe the preliminary proposal for a limited set of indicators represents an important, but at the same time quite complex and rather ambitious initiative in the implementation of the GCM. These indicators can, we believe, serve as a useful metrics in providing opportunity to find common approaches in migration management by improving the harmonization of data, concepts, and definitions between countries, and to mostly capitalize on the power of administrative data. However, given the scale of the GCM as we know, the most comprehensive document covering almost all aspects of migration, as well as the different realities in terms of approaches to migration in different countries, makes this task a bit complex one. So we, also Azerbaijan, as a champion country on the implementation of the GCM, really appreciate the effective work of the UN network on migration and are pleased with the actual progress made in developing a proposal for a limited set of indicators. And we are confident that the close collaboration between the members of the workstream, the excellent support by the network, and the joint commitment will make this process inclusive, efficient, and transparent. Now, when it comes to the objectives of our cluster, I would like to note that, as we know, for evidence-based policymaking is of crucial importance for migration management. And in this regard, the importance of disaggregating data, especially by gender and migratory status, can be a good starting point and should be specifically emphasized. And of course, coordination and collaboration among stakeholders for comprehensive collection and dissemination of migration data is also very important. And also another important aspect in this regard is a better integration of different migration data sources, especially administrative data. And also, it's really important, again, as noted, to have a more enhanced interagency coordination in order to formulate common approaches toward data collection and also utilizing it in a best effective for migration management. And we also, from Azerbaijan's perspective, we do have more or less of a centralized system where we have an unified migration information system established that generally collects all the accurate and disaggregated data for the evidence-based policies. And of course, this also helps us to comply with the guiding principles set forward in the GCM regarding the enhancement of the collaboration across all sectors. And we do, in this regard, regularly and closely cooperate with the State Statistical Committee of the country. And also, we just, also in this regard, we just also recently developed our migration profile and updated it, I would say, in the most comprehensive manner, and where we had a focus on the process of immigration, emigration, return, and internal migration, as well as we tried to tackle the relationship between migration and human development aspects. And also, I would like to note that we also pay special attention to the issues of partnerships. When it comes to Objective 23, I would like to specifically emphasize our perspective on that. As a chair in office for the Almaty process, which is, as you know, one of the regional consultative processes that tackle issues of international migration as well as refugee issues, we are trying to, more on with our priorities, to focus on increasing knowledge and skills, both in how to best harmonize the data collection and utilizing it in the most proper way. And also, we are trying to focus more on capacity building of the migration practitioners. So having said this, I would like to also just briefly emphasize our take on the indicators and objectives. We believe that it's really an effective approach to split the indicators to core and additional indicators. We believe there are some parts, specifically maybe on the objective 1, as we talk about the capacity building measures, it would be also good to add some more additional indicators related with the capacity building in order to explore the capacity building efforts and initiatives. And also, I think we can also relate it with the objective 3, 7, and 17, and also 24. I think we can look in order to fine-tune maybe the numbers of the additional indicators in order to have at least more a real picture on the implementation of all the objectives actually of the GCM. And once again, I would like to note that we really stand ready as we provided our initial inputs for the indicators and for the questionnaire, and we again stand ready for the cooperation in this regard in order to achieve more fruitful results. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you, Mr. Aliyev, for this insightful presentation. I would also like to thank the colleagues who work behind the scenes to make such a big meeting possible and to make it run smoothly. And among them, of course, our interpreters who graciously decided to give us 15 minutes extra. So today we have interpretation in French, Spanish, and English. So they decided to stay with us a little longer. I know we're over time. I would like now to open the floor. So please raise your hands if you want to comment on the fourth cluster. We really want to make the most of our time. Thanks. Don't be shy. We just got the interpreters to stay extra 15 minutes more. So, and we really like to hear from you, this 94 people in the meeting. So now it's your chance. Yeah, so maybe, I know it has been a long meeting. So I don't know how we proceed now. I don't want to take too much time from everyone. I don't know if Irene and Claire have additional recommendation. We also have 2 colleagues lined up for closing remarks. So
I can take some of the questions and some of the comments, which were extremely helpful. So thank you very much. And perhaps also some of our reactions from myself and Irene will trigger some more interventions from the floor. But first of all, thank you for your excellent comments. And we've taken extensive notes, and we're very much looking forward to going back to the proposal and revising it based on your feedback. But it was extremely important to hear many of you making reference to how you see the important link between the proposal and the 2030 agenda, and that connection being in the paragraph 70 and obviously in the GCM itself. So that was very helpful. The colleague from Ecuador, I think your idea of having a technical guide, perhaps explaining how the indicators are defined more specifically and also how the data could be collected, is something that we've been discussing internally in the group. And if that's something that member states see as useful, that's definitely something we would work on to develop. The reporting issue is something that we've been trying to address. So many of the indicators are a part of existing frameworks, such as the SDGs. So there is an existing reporting mechanism in place. However, as the colleague from the Eurostat EU mentioned, we need to reflect also on some of the indicators that are more challenging for member states to provide data on. There was reference, for example, to 1073 and 1071 on recruitment costs and on the deaths of migrants in transit. And we definitely stand ready to work on that. And the proposal of having them perhaps put in as additional or to provide additional technical support is something that we are happy to engage in discussing with you. We have definitely paid a lot of attention to the disaggregation aspect. We have an annex in the discussion note, Annex 6, which provides a few elements. But as Irene mentioned in the introduction, also the second half of the work of this work stream is going to focus on that. And this is an area where I think a lot of the work we've done together with you on the indicators is going to really come into the fore when we start to look at exactly the dimensions that need to be reflected there, including migratory status, gender, age. We have reflected your comments in the survey, in particular about making sure that the proposal is balanced in terms of the guiding principle. And definitely one of the common comments that we received was more emphasis on women and children and gender. And so we've tried to do that. And we're happy that many of you see that reflected in the revised proposal. We are, of course, ready to engage with member states who have concerns or issues. We are happy to meet with you bilaterally or in groups, so please feel free to reach out to us. It is our intention to try to make this proposal as good as possible, as balanced as possible. The comment on the including disaggregation of access to service for migrants with irregular status is something that can probably be addressed. So we're happy to speak to you about that. We also take note of the comment that we need to make sure that the proposal is limited and that we reflect on the capacities of member states which differ. And I think also the comments that made by Diego at the beginning about how perhaps we can use this exercise as a potential way to leverage efforts and improve coordination and efforts to increase statistical capacity. So thank you very much. Irene?
Yes, thank you, Claire. I think you have answered the most important points. I would like to thank all the participants also for all the points raised. We have taken extensive notes, as Claire also mentioned, and we look forward to continuing revising this. And we are also very happy to have additional meetings if you should wish so. And back to Dominic.
Yes, thanks to Claire and Irene, very knowledgeable as always. If I don't see any other hands from the floor, I would like to tell you that we have two esteemed colleagues for closing remarks. We have Marina Manke, she's the chief of IOM's Global Migration Data Analysis Center, and Bela Hovi, who's chief of Population Trends and Analysis Branch at UNDESA. Two colleagues I met in Geneva last week. Very thankful you're here to do the closing remarks and the key takeaways. And with this, I hand over to Marina. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, everyone. Very insightful discussions, feedback. As colleagues mentioned, we took note of each single suggestion, idea. We will review those and make sure that as we move forward towards finalizing, we make the most. But of course, reinforcing what was already shared, what we are doing is just proposing a framework, and it's up to the countries to then see how to use it best. But if you have other ideas where we can be of help, please do suggest this type of support, which we would like to really provide, not only relying on the team in Berlin and the center, which is now part of the Global Data Institute, but also the whole of our organization. Just to reconfirm that it's not only the teams who are engaged, we are also coordinating within International Organization for Migration, operational pillar part. So on each single pillar, and each single objective. So all the technical expertise we have at our disposal, we are tapping into that. And that's a joint team effort, which again, I would like to praise. So over to Bella now, and thank you everyone, and looking forward to finalizing this quite a long period of joint work. Hopefully this is not going to stop there. Over to you, Bella, and maybe you can make sure that perfect. Now your picture is sharp.
Bella, we cannot hear you.
Okay, there seems to be a technical hiccup. Just like let's give Bella a minute to see if he can reconnect.
Maybe as Bella is connecting, can we just make sure that we tell everybody the dates again? The 12th is the deadline for submitting surveys, but now we have the Bella. That is the most important one, yes, to adhere. And then there will be more information. Bella, we're still not hearing you. But I just wanted to reassure everyone, again, it's been a wonderful collaboration between our two teams, the IOM and the UNDESA. And again, Claire and Irene, you know them, but behind Claire and Irene, as I mentioned, there are a lot of colleagues who are supporting. And also, indeed, as Dominic said, last week we were really all together in Geneva. We had another UN Network for Migration working group. Again, the feedback from all the UN partners was also immense. So, unfortunately, Bella, let me just then, say thank you on your behalf. And as Dominic mentioned, that the interpreters have to leave right now, and we are also losing colleagues from the countries. So unless what we could do also from Bella's side, if there are some specific content or questions or suggestions, we make sure that this is made available to everybody who was on the call with us. But on behalf of, again, both co-chairs of the working group, I'm thanking everyone. And let's stay together. Let's make it happen. That's the whole point. And today there were lots of very good suggestions. So let's really make sure that we are not losing them, and each single submission, we've done to each survey answer, and otherwise, either during discussions or bilateral inputs, we are recording them and we are taking care to ensure that they are all incorporated. So wishing everyone a beautiful time, even though it's not maybe they were so nice, and staying in touch. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.